Drawing from Observation, Lesson 7, 1-Point Perspective. Before starting this lesson, please have the following materials ready: sketchbook, sketchpad, ebony pencil, kneaded eraser, pencil sharpener, ruler, mobile device or script, camera, viewfinder, subject matter, interior spaces. Keep track of assignments. Do each exercise in order in your sketchbook or sketchpad, and on each page write your name and the number of the exercise, for example, O-7A. Remember to take photos of all the drawings you do for this lesson and some of the subjects. We'll tell you which subjects to photograph after the exercise. As in Lesson 6, you'll need a mobile device or a printed script to follow this lesson when you draw in different locations, as well as a camera. The previous lessons introduced perspective principles and drawing techniques applied to objects and spaces drawn in 1- and 2-point perspectives. Here, we deal with 1-point perspective in greater depth. In the process, you'll learn how perspective not only helps you represent what you see more accurately, but also helps you organize scenes compositionally through the design principles of unity, balance, and emphasis. This lesson needs to be done in a space where there are long perspective lines to deal with. One of our examples was drawn in the stacks of a university library, but you can draw in any long hallway or similar setting wherever you can work comfortably for 35 minutes or so. The reason for drawing a deep space like a hallway rather than a regular room is to teach you how to measure and compare elements that are far away in relation to those that are closer, a skill necessary to depict space convincingly. This lesson pulls together several techniques you learned in this course so far: clock face angles, sight measuring, negative space, and using a viewfinder to frame the scene. As usual, we'll start with a warm-up, letting you practice these skills in a different context at first. Find an appropriate hallway or similar long space and stand or sit facing the far wall at a distance. Then hold the viewfinder so you can see the back wall, side walls, or other receding surfaces like shelving, plus the ceiling and floor, all without turning your head. Exercise O-7A, Gesture and Measuring. Time, 2 steps at 5 and 10 minutes, so 15 minutes. Materials, sketchbook, ebony pencil, pencil sharpener, eraser, ruler, viewfinder. Subject, hallway and 1-point perspective. Looking through the viewfinder, start by viewing the space in different spots. Hold the viewfinder vertically so the back wall is set low in the frame, but be sure you can see some parts of the ceiling and floor as well as one or both side walls. Move from side to side and up and down until you get a composition you like. Be sure to maintain a 1-point perspective view by keeping the viewfinder parallel with the back wall and perpendicular to your line of sight. Once you've decided on a view, place the viewfinder vertically on the page and trace the inside frame. Now, try your best to replicate the scene observed through the viewfinder inside the frame on your page. Start drawing in a loose, gestural manner to see the space as a whole and use light lines so drawing will be easy to correct without erasing. Ideally, gesture drawings should develop as a whole, but it might help to follow these steps. First, sketch in the back wall. Second, locate on the back wall a horizon line at your eye level and find a vanishing point related to your line of sight. To determine the line and point, find landmarks on the wall like door handles and trim that line up with the height and position of your eye. Third, sketch in sidewalls, ceiling, and floor, taking receding lines back to the vanishing point. Fourth, if time allows, add details to each surface, again tracing receding lines back to the vanishing point. Okay, start. and stop. Now let's take the initial sketch to the next level by applying careful sight measuring techniques to it. Take note of this example, then go through each of the following steps on your own drawing. These steps will also be listed for you on the timing page. Number 1. Hold up the viewfinder so it's facing the back wall. Use the top and bottom edges of the viewfinder to locate landmarks on the ceiling and floor of the hallway that correspond with the cropping of the picture. These red lines across the floor and ceiling show where key drawn lines stop inside the picture plane. Number 2. Check the proportions of the back wall by comparing its height to its width. As in the sight measuring lesson, use your pencil held at arm's length to take the measurements. First, hold it vertically to measure the height of the back wall, then turn it horizontally to mark the width. The width of this wall is half its height, but for your wall, proportions may differ. Number 3, use the height and/or width of the back wall as units of measurement to compare other proportions in your view. For example, take the height measurement of the back wall, then lower your arm to find this measurement's relation to the crop line. Next, raise your arm to determine the distance between the top of the back wall and cropping points for the ceiling. In this case, the height of the back wall is coincidentally the same length as the space between the bottom of the back wall and the lower edge of the picture plane. By contrast, the ceiling space is a little longer than the height of the back wall. Again, the spaces you observe will most likely be different. What's important is that you know how to use such measurements to compare heights and widths of surfaces that appear in your picture plane. Number 4, with those measurements in mind, modify the initial sketch to better mirror the proportional relationships you found looking at your scene. Number 5, use the clock face tool or a straight edge to measure the angles of the receding lines in order to discover the exact vanishing point and subsequently the exact horizon line. Okay, start. and stop. Take a photo of the hallway you just drew. Now get ready to apply your skills to a final one-point perspective composition. Preferably, look for another space to draw, not only to let you practice measuring again, but also to let you find a scene with a more interesting composition. If you need to take a break, now is a good time. You can also take this opportunity to look for another long perspective space to draw. Now let's consider what composition is and what it does. Composition is the arrangement of visual elements in a work of art. Among its purposes are to organize the diverse aspects of a visual experience and to guide the eye to important features. In a one-point perspective scene, the composition depends on the single vanishing point to unify the scene around it and to serve as a point of emphasis. This happens because all receding lines direct the eye to the same point. The most famous example of this is Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, where several perspective lines point us to the face of Jesus. Lines that lead the eye like this are called leading lines. Perspective can also affect the composition's balance. Leonardo's painting is symmetrically balanced with a central vanishing point and equal visual elements on the right and left sides. In Lawrence Alma Tadema's painting, After the Audience, the vanishing point is on the left side, giving the image an asymmetrical balance. Keep such compositional considerations in your mind when considering the view you plan to draw. Plan your drawing based on the position of the back wall in relation to the picture as a whole, leaving room for the other surfaces. Also, as you frame your scene in different positions, be sure to align the edges and corners of the back wall with the edges and corners of the viewfinder. This time, let's do a larger drawing since you'll have more time to work. Once again, we'll use the proportions of the viewfinder for the proportions of the frame of the picture, but double it so the image is 10 by 14 inches. To make this easy, either just double the lines from the inside of your viewfinder or use a ruler to mark off points from the edges of your 14 by 17 inch sketch pad, about 1.5 inches from the top and bottom and 2 inches from each side. Draw a rectangle based on those marks, and as you view your scene through the viewfinder, try to replicate it twice the size within the frame. While you might want to construct a vanishing point and horizon line for this drawing as you did before, we suggest you do what this student did. Take certain measurements at first, then work on the drawing as a whole. Although the holistic approach may not end up as accurate, working freely allows you to practice sight measuring as you integrate elements in relation to each other. In the process of drawing receding lines and following them back, you might end up finding the vanishing point possibly in a more accurate location than if you had started with the point. Exercise O-7B, Developed Hallway Drawing. Time, 3 stages at 5, 10, and 20 minutes, so 35 minutes. Materials, sketch pad, ebony pencil, eraser, pencil sharpener, and ruler, viewfinder. Subject, 1-point perspective hallway. Whichever approach you take, begin by doing compositional sketches of 3 or 4 views that seem most promising to you. Draw frames for the sketches using the inside of the viewfinder so the proportions are consistent. Then quickly sketch in the view as a whole using gestural lines or the blob method. Spend no more than 1.5 to 2 minutes on each composition. Okay, start. and stop. Choose the view you want to develop for the final drawing within the 10 by 14 inch frame, then either follow the steps you did before to find the vanishing point or simply start with a 10-minute sketch. In either case, draw lightly at first and begin by blocking in the back wall where you believe it should be. Locate it within the frame, leaving plenty of room around it for the sidewalls, floor, and ceiling. Next, sketch in the sidewall, ceiling, and floor. If you set up a vanishing point, take all receding lines diagonally back to it. If not, use the clock face to get the angle of each receding edge. If you're done before time is up, still drawing lightly, sketch in the architectural elements and other features. Okay, start. and stop. Now spend the remaining 20 minutes continuing to develop and correct your perspective drawing. Use all the tricks you've learned so far. Sight measuring will help you get the right proportions off the back wall and compare it to the side walls, ceiling, and floor. The clock face will let you correct corner angles and verify the position of the vanishing point if you have one. Also, check angles and the shape of planes by looking at the negative space they create around them. Take your time to get these measurements, proportions, and relationships accurate. You can make changes later, but as they say about taking a trip, a good beginning is half the journey. Once the architectural elements and the other major features are in place, develop the drawing using measurements from the back wall to locate details on the ceiling, floor, and side walls. Then refine the drawing with lines of different quality. For example, you can darken corner edges and other architectural features so they're clear, and use finer lines to add details. Continue to develop the drawing as long as time allows. Okay, start. And stop. Now that you've finished your drawing, take a photograph of the view you just drew. Then compare the photograph with the drawing. As with our student's drawing, which came out well overall, you may have missed the vanishing point here or there, even if you took time to construct it. Two common tendencies, as in this drawing, are either to place the vanishing point too high on the back wall, or to have set the lines meeting at different vanishing points. Such mistakes are normal and likely simply because perspective is a complicated process and takes time to perfect. More important than the final product is that you continue to develop your observational and drawing skills. With that in mind, don't make any corrections now that you're done, but do notice such discrepancies so you can watch for similar problems in the next lesson where you'll apply these same skills and observations to 2-point perspective subjects. Check that each page of drawing is labeled with your name and the number of the exercise, and be sure to take photographs of each page.